Hey folks, Steve Alcorn here with you once again. Welcome back to the channel. Geez, it's been a long time, just about a year, maybe a little less than a year, but we did a series of videos last year on our financial situation, how we got ourselves into $50,000 worth of credit card debt, and we came up with some ideas that we ran through the videos, and we wanted to let you guys all know how those worked out. Um, Not everything we talked about back then actually came to fruition. Some did, some didn't. And I'm happy to report, and I'll just be right up front with you guys, that we paid about 50% of our debt off in 1 year. And that is with no additional credit card usage except one where we use for household stuff. Uh, our washer and dryer broke, or our washer broke and our snowblower broke, so we had to use a card for that. Other than that, we didn't. There was no credit card usage over the 8 or 9 credit cards that we have. So I'll get right into explaining where we were and where we are and how we got there. First of all, we started off last year, and this was written down the 15th of March of 23. So that's almost a year ago. So the figure was a little bit higher than this, but this is when she wrote it all down. We had 7 cards at the time, at least on this list. And this is what the debt we had at the time that we wanted to get paid down. We had a Capital One, a Wells Fargo, a Discover, another Capital One, a Citi Diamond, a Voice Card, which is our local bank, Huntington Bank, and Citi Business Cards. Capital One was $11,996. I'm not going to give you the cents, but Wells Fargo was $8,158. Discover was $7,115. The Capital One was $6,140. Citi Diamond was $4,900 even. Voice was $4,904. And the Citi Business was $3,309. Totaling almost $50,000. In fact, it was probably over 50 back in January that year. So we started out with $50,000 worth of debt. At the end of the year, let me get those figures. It's all written down here for me. The total that we paid off was, we ended up with $26,310 owed. Out of that, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 0% interest cards now, and 1, 2, 3 that aren't 0%. Our highest interest rate on a card is 30%. We also have 26% and 23%. And that's that. So that was where we are, and where we were, and where we are. I'm looking at some of these other figures over here. Total on all the 0% interest cards we have currently is $16,500. The rest of that debt is on cards with interest. So we paid off essentially half of what we owed, and cut our credit card usage down too. We started out with 7 cards. We opened 4 more. We opened 4 0% interest cards, but we've done away with some of the other cards as far as usage. We still have the cards, we just don't use them. In fact, we don't use any of these cards. I think we did use one to get tires for my car or something like that, but it was one time, and I probably paid it off by now. Who knows? My wife does all the bill paying, but I'm just giving you figures. Started at 50, ended up with 26. So that's $24,000 we paid off in 1 year. Pretty damn good, I'd say. How do we do it? Well, we bit the bullet, number one. We stopped being resellers, which was our main income, a year ago, and started gig jobs. So I started with DoorDash on February 18th of last year, just before these figures were written down. My first job was $14. I thought, oh, that's pretty doggone good. It was a really easy one. I delivered a Burger King for $14. Sorry, I gotta get a little sip. And that started the journey. A few weeks later, now my wife Marcia would ride with me for a while, and then she decided to do DoorDash for herself. It took us a while to find a good market. Our local market is not good. I wouldn't make very much money if I stayed in my town. So we decided to travel to towards Cleveland. And we decided after a few weeks of that it wasn't worth going that far. So we went to the other side. We went over to the Pennsylvania side, over towards Erie, Pennsylvania, and that's where we decided to stay. It was less miles uh, and just easier to get to. Straight down the interstate. We didn't have to worry. It's about 30 miles before we can actually start work. And the other way towards Cleveland was closer to 50, I think 52 miles. That's what to start, like in Menor or Painesville, Ohio, or somewhere in that range. And we actually even went farther. We went over to Euclid and even into East Cleveland, which is not advisable. So once we got out of the Cleveland area and we started doing Erie, my wife decided that she would open her own DoorDash account. She did that for a month or two. And then we found out about Walmart Spark, which is Walmart grocery delivery. Walmart owns that app. And so it's their own thing. You can deliver for Walmart, Home Depot, Sam's Club, Sally's Beauty Supply, GameStop, and Advanced Auto. There might be some others in there. But generally, it's Walmart. I don't do very many of those other ones. And there's that. So I did DoorDash all the way up until July of last year. And then I was able to get into Walmart. There's always a waiting list to get into Walmart. Now, she got in fairly quickly, in a week or two. It took me several months. But once we got in, then we both exclusively right now are doing Walmart because that's where the money is in our area. DoorDash was only paying maybe $100 a day for an 8-hour shift. And that just wasn't cutting it. So we make a little more with Walmart and we're happy with it. Enough to pay these bills down. So, and still have grocery money and, we can eat, we can drive, and we could do whatever we need to do. And we're okay now. A year ago, we were pretty desperate. Today, we're in a pretty good position. So, thank God for the gig apps, at least for now. I do know there will be changes coming to these apps, and it will be harder and harder to make money doing them. So, we need to get out of this debt in time and go back to reselling or whatever we wish to do as soon as possible. But it might be another year before we get there. And I'll give you another update once we're debt free. And what I consider debt free, we don't count our house or cars. Those are expenses everybody has. What we're counting is just the credit card debt we were in. So that is that. Plus some. We actually were a little farther. Last year's tax burden was $6,400 from the year before, from 2022. We brought in a lot of money. It just wasn't enough. So we had to actually make payments on that tax burden too. So that isn't even in these figures. So we were actually a little over, quite a bit over 50. And still we got it down to 26, which is pretty good. There's just a lot of things that went into how we got there and what went wrong. And it was a long journey. And it's been a long journey for the last year to get to where we are, but we've made it. How do we get that far in debt? I've been thinking a lot about it. I really didn't even know we were in debt. It just didn't feel like we were. I thought we were chugging along pretty good. We were making decent money reselling. And then all of a sudden, we look at our credit card debt and it's $50,000. And we're like, oh boy. And so, how do we get there? A lot of it was just not understanding numbers, for me anyway. We made a good income on Amazon, but it wasn't enough to pay Amazon back. In other words, your fees for Amazon, shipping into Amazon, whatever you do. Maybe you merchant fulfill on Amazon or you ship it in FBA. I did a little bit of both, but there's always fees involved. Well, Amazon could pay for Amazon, but it couldn't pay for Amazon and our bills. And eBay obviously wasn't doing that either. It was paying for eBay, but not eBay and our bills. And so we just kept racking up credit card bills. We got to so desperate at one point last year that for a couple months, we had to actually pay for our groceries on credit cards. This was before we decided to crack down on ourselves and not do this sort of thing anymore. But it got that bad. I'm happy to say that we haven't had to do that in over a year now, or around a year now. So thank God. That is desperation when you get that deep. Uh, a good portion of one of those cards is just groceries, and that's not a good thing. You do not want to ever get to that level. So we had to step up. Now, we could have made minimum payments on all this stuff and leave them go forever and still be okay. Most people would do things like that, or a lot of people would do things like that. But we want to be debt free. We don't want to use credit cards anymore, and we want to keep them, but we don't want to use them. So a lot of the advice that you get is designed for people who are irresponsible with credit card and spending and get way behind and then can't make the payments and then ruin their credit. So a lot of the advice that you get on the internet or from individuals, I got a lot of advice from these videos. Most of that advice is designed for people who aren't us. We can be very responsible. We made some mistakes, absolutely. We got ourselves in a situation. In fact, it was me. I got ourselves in a situation that isn't enviable and not desirable, and I don't want to be there ever again, and we will never be there again. But it's not because we're irresponsible with the cards. It's because I didn't understand that I needed to make more income off the money that I was spending. That's it. That's really the basics of it. That's where it ended up. Plus, I made some bad purchases. I bought the Glowforge. That was $8,000, plus materials and all sorts of things to use the Glowforge. So the Glowforge, for those who aren't familiar or haven't watched my previous videos, is a laser cutting machine designed for home use. You can make all sorts of things, cut out shapes and all sorts of other things. I don't have too many examples in front of me, but that's what you could do with it. Engrave and stuff like that. And I thought, well, this is going to make us some money. And it did, but not nearly enough. I might have made $2,000 overall with the Glowforge, which didn't even touch, what it's worth or what I paid for it. So that was a big mistake. That's part of what got us there. Plus, there's other things we had to, do that got us in a lot of credit card debt. But that was a big portion of it right there. $8,000 for a machine that hasn't made me the money back, and it's not the machine's fault. That machine is very capable. It's a lot of people make a lot of money with those machines. I'm not one of them, and it's not because it can't do it. It's because I can't do it. I am not a designer. I am not I'm crafty, but not crafty enough to make money off of it. So that was a fail, and that's another big reason why we got into that. So that's how we got into that. How did we get out of it? Well, like I said, we did all these gig apps. We work these gig apps like a regular job. So we go into work. My wife leaves the house at 6:40 in the morning. I leave around 6:45, right around the same time. And we get to the Walmart that we work out of mainly at about 7:15, 7:20. We stay there till we take our last order after 2 o'clock. The orders come around 2:30, excuse me, 2:20 to 2:30, somewhere in that range. The orders come out, and we pick up our last order at 2:45 and head home. With that order, we try to get an order that's coming towards our house and deliver it, and then we head home. So we put a full 8 hours in every single day. I take Wednesdays off. She does sometimes, but generally does not. So she's working 7 days a week. I'm working 6 days a week. And so that's number one. You gotta treat it like a job. Even if you enjoy doing it, it's still a job, right? Even if you hate doing it, it's still a job. So regardless of how you feel about what you're doing, it's still a job. Even though you're an independent contractor, technically, it's still a job. So that's how you have to treat it, or you're not going to make enough money to pay your bills off like we need to. So that's number one. Number two, every single day, Walmart pays you on a daily basis. It can also pay you on a weekly basis, depending on which payment method you choose. We chose daily. So at the end of every day, we take whatever came in that day, whatever actual money came in that day, gross, and we use it at 20%. We take 20% of that money goes directly into a savings account, which is also Walmart gives you a debit card, and on that debit card, it works a lot like a bank account, but you have a savings account, as many a savings account as you want, and a checking account, technically. So we take it from the checking side or the debit side or whatever you want to call it and put it in a savings account, which has a 5% APY, whatever that means. So you make a little extra money back. They give you a little interest money. And then it sits in there for the entire year. You do not touch that money. It does not go anywhere. It doesn't get transferred out. It stays there so that it continues to make the interest. At the end of the year, that money goes to pay taxes, and whatever's left over goes to pay an additional credit card off or a bill or whatever it is that we need it for at the end of the year. Additionally, every single day, at the end of the day, we have a gas station here in our town and we fill up our gas tanks. And that sounds a little silly, maybe, just fill up gas whenever you need it, but we do it daily because we work in Pennsylvania, we live in Ohio. There can be as much as an 80-cent difference in gas some days between the state of Pennsylvania and the state of Ohio. Right now it's closer, it's more like 30 or 40 cents, but it can be a lot higher. So it makes more sense for us to fill up in Ohio, and we do it daily so that there's never a single chance that we have to fill up in Pennsylvania. Just makes sense to us, and that's how we do that. And I've actually gotten really used to that. I'll park at the gas station. I'll do my 20% a day at that time, and then I'll fill up my gas tank. Additionally, only on my side, I don't know that my wife does it, but I do, $5 a day into a savings account that I call Just Because. And at the end of the year or anytime during the year, because it's just because money, I can take money out of that and buy something frivolous if I want. So my goal at the beginning was to save up enough to get a new laptop because mine blew up. Somehow the screen got broke, and yeah, it's a long story. But anyway, that when I say it's a long story, I have no clue what the story is. I don't know how it got broke. But so my idea was to save up for an M2 or an M3 Mac, MacBook Air, or a MacBook Pro or something. But if you can save $5 a day consistently, you make $1,800 a year or so, somewhere in that range. That's pretty doggone good. It's $5, but you got to do it every day. You got to be consistent, and you got to do it every day. I do it only on the days that money comes into my account. Today I'm not working. Money still comes into my account because the way Walmart does it, customers have 24 hours to verify their tips. If they don't verify within 24 hours, you get whatever the tip was. But they can change the tip anywhere in that 24-hour period. And sometimes it happens. 90% of the time, it doesn't. Whatever tip it is, it comes through. So today, even though I didn't work, tips from yesterday are coming in. So I'll still do to $5 a day today. So that's how we save money. Now we'll talk about what we did with that money. At the beginning of the year, we had those 7 credit cards. We opened 4 0% interest cards. We would have opened more. I would have opened one if it would have took care of all of his stuff, but they only gave us certain credit balances on each card, so we had to open several. Right away, we opened 3, and then additionally, when we knew we could afford it, we opened one more. On the total amount on those cards is $16,500. So $16,500 of our credit right now, and I think this is the current figure, the most current figure. Those are on 0% interest cards. And what you do with a 0% interest card, I think some of them are 21 months. I think the majority of them are 18 months. Is you figure out what your balance is. So if I owe $100, I know it's a figure. I figure how many months there are, 18, and I divide $100 by 18, and that's what I pay a month on each of these cards. So we have 4 of those. One of them is over $400 a month. That one gets paid off in October. 2 of them get paid off in January. So 90%, I'd say almost, I'd do a good portion of that 16,500, at least 10 grand of it. Because I think we have about 6,000 on the other card, the one that, the farthest one out. I'm not sure when that gets paid off. I think it's an 18-month card, so that's sometime next year. So about 10,000 of that will be gone by January. So that'll cut us down to 26. That'll cut us down to about $16,000 in credit card debt. We're not adding additional debt to this. There is a card that we use for emergencies, like our washing machine broke. We put that on a card that's not included in this stuff because we don't count it as this debt. It's a different debt, which we still make our payments on, but it's not counted in this. So even the figures I'm giving you doesn't count our house payments or our car payments either. I'm just giving you the figures for these credit cards that I screwed up on. So 16,500 in 0% interest cards. We have one card. Our highest interest rate is 30%. So that'll be the next big card we get rid of. We have one that's 26 and one that's 23. Those are killer interests. They're horrible. They're high. They're garbage. It's the state of the way things are right now. But it was not a good idea to take out any of those cards. But 30% interest, that's crazy. We have $5,000 still on that card. So that'll probably be the next one that we eliminate. And we have 6,000 I still owe on the card that I bought the Glowforge with. So yeah, there's still a lot of debt on these cards, just not nearly where it was when we started. And so the 0% interest cards helped out a lot, but we can only take out so many because if you keep doing that and you need to pay them off in that amount of time, your payments get higher and higher. So I said one of them is $400. I think one's $200. There's one in the $180 range. So the payments are significantly higher if you keep taking those out, and we need to know where we can afford it. And that's why we took out an additional one later. We started with 3. We took out an additional 4th one because we could afford it. And if we can pay off more things, maybe we can afford a 5th one. And we'll get them all on 0% interest and get them all wiped out quickly. Not saying we couldn't pay extra on some of these 0% if we needed that to do that too. Get them paid off even quicker. But if you can do 0% interest cards, if your credit's good enough, my score is still over 700. So we're still good enough to get 0% interest cards and able to pay them. I think a lot of the problems with some of the advice I got when we did this video series last year, get rid of all your credit cards. Well, that wasn't a good idea for us. And the reason was because it took me forever to build up this credit. And I'm not willing to let it go. We were never late on a card. That advice is for people who can't handle credit cards. And yes, we had a hiccup with our credit cards. Doesn't mean we can't handle them. And we knew that going into this payoff period is that, can we keep these cards and never use them? Well, I'm proud to say, here's the stack. Now, some of these are repeats. This is not all the credit cards we had. But here's the stack. It sits in my desk drawer unused. I don't carry them with me. We don't use them. There's actually one in my wallet in case there was an extreme emergency, and I think that's a good idea, but we don't use it. So, okay, that was the 0% cards. The rest of the cards, for example, the one that I said was the voice card. It actually has the lowest interest rate. It's 23%. One second. Sorry about that. When I talk a lot, my throat dries out, and I don't know why that is, but it does. Probably taking too much air in. So the cards that have more or still have interests on them that aren't on the 0% interest cards, how do we deal with those? My wife was looking at that voice card one day and noticed that the interest payment, let's say it was $84. We owed $84 in interest that month, regardless of what the minimum payment was. The interest payment was, let's say 84. The minimum payment was 83. Now, those are not the real figures. I don't know what the real figures are. And she looked at that and said, if we keep on that routine, paying minimum payment like is suggested by, Dave Ramsey, pay off your high card, pay off minimum on the low cards until you can pay those. If we keep on that, we'll never pay off that card. even if we only ever paid minimum payment, even a couple bucks above minimum payment, that card would be here till, you know, eternity. So she looked at that and said, well, how can I change that with these cards that still have interest on them? And she said, I can pay interest plus a certain dollar amount. Now, whatever that dollar amount is for somebody else is going to be different than what it is for us. Currently, it's three cards that we pay interest on. I think it's I think it's three. And she takes the interest payment and adds $100 to it. So if it's $84, it's $184. There's one card that I think is $16 in interest a month, and she pays $116 on that one. If you can afford it, that's the way to do it. It gets paid down a lot faster, and you don't have to worry about screwing with a minimum payment that's lower than your interest rate. I don't even know how that's legal. That's crazy. Now, you also have to make sure whatever you're putting above on the interest, you have to make sure that card allows that. All ours do. Some card, I think most cards do nowadays, but there used to be a time where if you made an extra payment, it didn't go to the principal. I don't know. But all our cards allow us to make early payments or extra payments, and it goes to the principal, which is great. So make sure that happens, and also make sure that you can afford it. So if yours is $20 above, do $20 above. Do whatever it takes, as long as it's more than the minimum payment and it's more than the interest payment. That's how we did that. So that's how a lot of that money got paid off quickly. Most of it on the 0% cards, the rest of it by paying $100 extra on the interest every month. I'm not sure when she exactly started that, but once we started that, then things started flowing pretty good. So that's pretty much how we paid all those cards off. Now let's talk about some of the advice from the videos that we got last year. Originally, one of our plans was to maybe try to remortgage our home. There was a lot of ideas that we had on how we could get, $50,000 for somebody who wasn't making a lot of money at the time seemed like an impossible hill to climb. So the only thing we could think of, what do we got that's worth $50,000? Well, our house is worth well over that. So maybe we could refinance the house and use that money, or borrow against the house and use that money to pay, take out a $50,000 loan, use that to pay off the credit card bills. Then you have one payment a month. Even if it's $12 or $15 or $2,000 a month, still just one payment. Go to one place, easy peasy, summer breezy, good to go. Well, that fell through because the prior year we didn't make quite enough money. And it's the way that we make money. We made enough money. It's just the way that it's broken up. Her business and my business are separate. And that's how it showed on tax returns. And so because of that, they didn't take the entire amount of money. It was a big fiasco. We spent a lot of time. We paid extra in taxes because we didn't use the mileage, because we needed to get the income a little higher. It was just a fiasco that I at this point wish I had never done or had done differently. Would I refinance the house or take a loan out against the house to pay off these bills? Sure, because I know we're responsible with our bills. We've never missed a payment. 10 years now, never missed a single payment ever. Never will. And so that's, if you can't be responsible like that, then what we've done is not going to work for you, of course. If you're late on bills consistently or miss payments for long periods of time, you have things in, you got creditors calling you all the time. None of what we do is going to work for you. It might help a little, but it's not going to get you, if you can't change that habit of spending, it's not going to get you out of debt. We knew that we could change the habit of spending because we weren't only spending most of that money trying to make more money. We made some mistakes with it. I made mistakes with it. And that's what got us into the debt. But it wasn't because we were out frivolously spending money on stupid things that at least wouldn't, in the long run, make us something. The Glowforge was the biggest mistake, but it was a money-making idea that just fell through. Since then, we've decided that if we go back into reselling or any business, it has to be a cash-based business. And so far, I'm cool with that. And I think I always will be, because if I don't have the cash, I don't need to buy it. I can build the same kind of business on cash that I did on credit. I just don't have to. It might take longer. That's all it is. Might take a little longer, but we can do it. I know people who only ever work on cash and they have decent businesses going. And I know I can do the same. So that is where we'll be with the credit cards. But the piece of advice was, don't do that. Don't take a loan out against your home. You'll lose your home. Well, that might be true for some people, but it wouldn't have been true for us. I said all that to say that. It wouldn't have been true for us. We would have paid the bills. We would have worked extra hours. We would have done whatever it took to get there. Right now, we're comfortable working 8 hours a day. If I had to work 10 hours a day, we would have done it, just because that's what needed to be done. Eventually, we can start working less hours a day if we want to, take some time off. We still do go on vacation. We never stop doing that sort of thing, but it's only 1 or 2 weeks out of the year where we go down to visit her mother and we stay at her mother's house. We're not paid for hotels or anything like that. So that's that idea that people had, that I would lose my house if I did that. Well, you can be happy we didn't lose the house, but I never had to go through that situation anyway. The other idea was cut up all your credit cards. Call your credit card companies. Tell them you don't want the credit card no more. That kind of thing. Well, again, for people who cannot handle credit cards or have no self-control over credit cards, that's a fantastic idea. But we spent 10 years building my credit to be where it is now. It's not perfect, but it's close. It's getting there. It's not in the excellent range just yet. It's been there. But because we had so much debt, it went down a little. I'm still over 700, which is pretty good for me. And I can go out and get a loan if I need to or whatever. I won't, but I could. And that's where we want to be. Because if there is ever a time that we need to move houses or whatever, we'll still be able to do it. And if I get rid of all this credit card now, as they get paid off, I cut them up and call the company and cancel them. Well, then I lower and lower and lower my credit score every time I lose a credit card. With that said, we have canceled 2. Well, I'm about to cancel 1, and there was another one. I canceled my Wells Fargo, and the reason for that is I don't use it, and it has a yearly fee. I can't remember what the yearly fee was. I canceled that one as soon as it got paid off quite a while ago. That one got paid off a while ago. The other, or I might have switched that over to a 0% interest card, and then that got paid off. The other card that I just paid off, and we'll get to that, how we did that, what all this 20% a day stuff did for us this year. Just paid off one that was only $500, but it has also an annual fee. So that one can go away. We got that one for miles, and it just wasn't, we don't use them. So, we don't go nowhere. So, those are the only 2 cards I'll cancel. The rest of them keeping. If I need to use them occasionally to keep the credit score up, I will. Right now, I think we're right around the 30% where you're supposed to be with credit card usage. So that's good. It'll go lower. It'll go a lot lower. It'll go down to almost 0% at some point. And then we'll have to make a decision on how we keep our credit scores high with low credit card usage. But we don't use them. I haven't put anything except for the washer and the snowblower on a separate card that we don't count in this debt because it was an emergency situation at the time. Those 2 things were necessary. I can't shovel the driveway, neither can she, because we both have herniated discs, and it's just a long story. And that's why we don't have W-2 jobs either. We can work at our own pace on these gig jobs. It's great stuff. So we're not cutting up any credit cards except those 2. Just to keep the credit score high. And we've been very responsible. We've always been responsible. We've never been frivolous buyers. We just got into some business debt, really. That's all that was. The goal is to come back from this all at some point. And I know I said there was something else I wanted to talk about. Oh, how we did with the 20% a day. Well, the main reason to save 20% a day was not for any other purpose except to save up money to pay taxes. because we're self-employed individuals. We know there's going to be a tax burden at the end of the year. Your mileage for your cars can cover a good portion of it, but it's not going to cover it all. So how do we do with the 20% a day? Um, well, we saved enough to pay our taxes, which were $6,400 to the federal government and $400 to our locality, the town we live in. The state of Ohio is really good to people like us who are self-employed, and we didn't owe anything to them. We do pay an accountant. He was $600 to prepare the taxes. The reason we pay an accountant is not because I can't do taxes myself, but because we have several different sources of income that come in. I made 12,000 on eBay last year. Not very much, but it's something. But you still have to have profit and loss and all that, Schedule C and all that stuff. She made 15,000 on eBay last year, and I made some money on Amazon. I'm sure that was in the 5,000 range or less. It wasn't a whole lot on Amazon last year. There was some Etsy, some Mercari, stuff like that. So those things, for those reasons, we still keep an accountant, but we only have them do our taxes at the end of the year. So that cost us an additional $600, which came out of that 20% as well. The rest of the 20% went to pay off a credit card. We had one that was just over $6,000, and one that was at $500, was almost paid off. So those are the two that we paid off. And we still had a little bit of money left over after that. Not a whole ton. We're starting to rebuild that now. I've already got this year over $1,900 saved for taxes for next year. So 20% a day adds up really quick. We didn't start the 20% at the beginning of our working last year. We started it kind of a little bit later, so we could have actually had more. So I mean, really, that's all there is to it, guys. We paid off half our debt essentially in 1 year by doing some very simple things. We do not miss that 20% a day because it goes from one account straight into the other, never in our pockets. I don't miss my $5 a day. I don't miss my gas money every day. We don't go out. The last thing is we don't go out to eat. We pack our lunch every day. She has a salad and soups and stuff, and I have sandwiches. And so there's no McDonald's in there anywhere. In fact, I've lost my desire for McDonald's for the most part because I'm trying to lose weight anyway. So I haven't even eaten at McDonald's in a while. But we just don't go out to eat. On special occasions, anniversary or something like that, maybe a birthday, I will take my mother out for Mother's Day, that sort of thing. We will do that. Other than that, there is no going out to eat. And that is a personal choice more than a financial choice. We just don't do it. I'd like to on occasion. It needs to be a special occasion. And that's that. There's not a lot of entertainment stuff going on. I canceled 90% of the things that I was paying for on a monthly basis, like all my reselling apps. I don't really use them. The only thing I kept was InRoute and Everlance. Everlance to keep track of miles, and InRoute for plotting out maps for like yard sales. And those two are really cheap. I think Everlance might be $9 a month or something. It's not that expensive. And InRoute's like $10 a year. So those two I kept for reselling. There's some personal ones that we had initially canceled, like all our Hulus and Netflix and things like that. But you need entertainment in your life. So I know we have Hulu and Netflix. We have Paramount Plus, but that is free when you keep a certain rating with Walmart Spark. When you're a delivery driver, they give it to you for free. Free Walmart Plus, which comes with Paramount Plus. So that one's free. But so we have a couple streaming services. That's really it. We do not have cable TV. We never have. We haven't for probably 10 years now. We cut the cord a long time ago. Of course, you have to pay for your internet, so that's a monthly bill. But for the most part, we keep our bills really low. Our entertainment fairly low, and our food bills, just whatever we buy for regular groceries, and no real going out to eat unless it's a special occasion. And by doing those things and saving your 20% a day, we paid the bills off, and we're got about another year to go, maybe a little less, but we'll be there. And then we're going to tackle the house, and we're going to pay that off in 2 years. And the cars. House and cars are next. I might be able to go back to reselling prior to that. I hope so. I don't want to be doing the delivery for another 5 years or anything like that. And I think that income eventually those gig jobs are going to be a whole lot different than they are today, and they're not going to be worth doing. But that is the update, folks. Future of this channel, I have no idea. I mean, I always talk about doing videos and then I never do them. So there may be more videos. I'll probably give you an update in another year on this, maybe sooner, maybe later. If something drastic happens, of course, sooner. Hopefully nothing drastic happens unless we win the lottery, which I never play. That's another thing I don't do. So that's that. Thanks for watching. I'd say like, share, and subscribe, but there's no real reason to do that. Watch this. Oh, it's not doing it. I must have it turned off. Hold on. I'll give you guys something here at the end. I don't know how to do it now. Oh, there it is. It's on. Why isn't it working? It's supposed to be with this iPhone. There it is. All right. You guys have a good day.